Good afternoon. It's Monday night, 8 p.m. You know what that means? Facebook and YouTube Live. It's time for the dialogue with Josie. It's your boy. I'm flying solo tonight. KV actually is on a He's actually in my area, and we kind of doing a little trading places. You see, I'm out of studio tonight. We're doing a trading places thing tonight, but I'm not going to talk. You know what time it is. You know what the show is. You know who the host is. The hosts are. You know what's going on here. We want to squeeze in all 59 minutes and 43 seconds left of the night show and get our guest right on. Tonight's guest is none other than the executive director of Faith in Florida. Uh, awesome Pastor Rhonda Thomas. So we want to get right to Pastor Rhonda. How are you tonight, Pastor?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I am great. I feel like I have Barack Obama on the show tonight because of I know you are more than an humble person, but your testimony and your story and your witness and your works just rate you in high echelon. And we've had some names on here, but I'm excited tonight personally. I just wish my brother was here with me tonight, but he's a pretty busy fella. But Pastor, just introduce yourself and just introduce yourself to and let everybody know who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. My name is Rhonda Thomas. I serve in two major capacities. My husband and I are we are pastors in Miami, Florida, Miami-Dade County, and there's a city inside of Miami-Dade County by the name of Opelika. We've been pastoring the New Generation Baptist Church for a little over 33 years. Um, and I also serve as the executive director for Faith in Florida, where we are a faith-based organization where we're actually represented in 41 counties and over 100 cities and towns where we organize around racial, economic, and social justice. And some of the main things that we target statewide is protecting democracy, immigration, and reducing gun violence and mass incarceration. Not alone, we have so many other local issues such as public education, housing, and you name it, and we organize around it, building power within communities where they can be able to stand on their own and stand for themselves. Um, and so that's what we do. We're huge. We've grown in a short period, but we are in just doing the work of God overall.
Pastor, you mentioned it's two major uh, uh, jobs that you do, two major callings that you're called to, and you balance the scale. Did you and your husband found your church, your ministry? Or were you all called to an established church?
Well, the first 7 years of ministry, we um, we were called to a church in Miami-Dade County, and then 7 years later, we are the founders of our church. God led us in another way of ministry, and so we serve as the founding founders of our ministry. We have, I guess, a little over 300 people, but it's a church that is filled with love and all about family.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm excited by that because Pastor, we're not as big as you guys, not nearly as big as you guys are, but after 97 and a half years, I acquiesced to the call to start a ministry. You may not know, but I got my seminary training in Louisville at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Shh, don't tell anybody about that part. Uh, but because I don't share any, I want to set the record straight, any of their conservative values, not even theological, because they're not really theological. They're economical or sociological, based in racism. But that's another story. Um, when I first got there, and certainly as I was heading out of the door, the last year I was already pastoring a church in Chicago and commuting, but they did their best to set me up and a lot of my friends up in ministry. With I think it's 3 years or 5 years. They pay a handsome salary. They take great care of you to start Black Southern Baptist churches, and I kind of liken that into imperialism. Or I have a friend now who calls it taking money from a slave master, and that's something I have to work over. But after being down, serving 9 years outside of Chicago, and then coming, I was brought to South Florida with Dr. C.E. Glover. He nor I know what the real purpose for God bringing us here. I came down as his assistant pastor with possibility of someday succeeding him. He's now stepping down. And after 6 years, God led me to do something that I never thought I'd do, and that started ministry. So my hat's off to you and your husband, because that takes a whole lot,
It
a whole lot.
is. It does.
Pastor,
It does.
yeah, we're going to talk about the fight for democracy, but I'm just kind of slowly walking into this tonight. You have a unique story that I haven't even heard, and so our listeners here in Dozell land will be hearing it. I'll be hearing it with them for the first time. We're on YouTube and Facebook Live, and a lot of our members go back and a lot of our friends go back and look at the show at their convenience. The only disadvantage is that they can't interact with us via messenger, but that's all right. We'll get the message to them. But tell us a little about your story. And there's some things about ministry I want to ask you before we get into the fight for democracy in the state.
Okay, so you want my story in ministry, not the story with democracy,
Your
right? I just
story, however you want to blend it, your story.
well, uh, it's amazing when I think back. My husband and I come from the same church. That's where I met my husband, at New Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church under the leadership of the late Reverend Dr. Arthur Jackson Jr. And we had just been married um was it 7 months before my husband was called to pastor his first church. So, I didn't even know how to be a wife, not alone, as one would say, someone's first lady. And so, I went from one, the honeymoon was really over, at the first church that my husband pastored in. It was a Free Will Baptist church. And just learning how to be this whole thing of the ministry of marriage, and then um, being pastors and leaders of a church was huge for us, because it was just so much learning. And when I say we learned a lot in a short period of time. And then God laid it on our hearts to start our own ministry. So we actually started in our home.
Oh
Our
wow!
first service was in our home. Um, I had two small children, and a baby and a baby. One was 2.5, and one had just gotten here. And so um, we started in our home, and our first service was, I think it was 35 members at our first service that had actually, well, people had decided they wanted to follow us in ministry and be with us. And from there, we moved to the school. And it just so happened that my husband was he still is an educator for Miami-Dade County school system. And so we had a service inside of John F. Kennedy Middle School for a year. And from there we moved, we purchased this huge piece of land and this mansion that was once a drug dealer's home. We purchased it and turned it into a church. Um, and unfortunately, the neighbors, it was a very diverse community, the neighbors did not want us there. They did not want a church in the neighborhood. And when I say they did everything possible to harass us, we were you people, and you name it. You saw racism even kick up in the midst of a church. They preferred a drug dealer being there opposed to a church in the middle of their community. And
Wow.
yeah, and so God led us to where we are now, the building that we're in now. My husband is a realtor. It's amazing. When God orders your steps, He orders it. He's a realtor, and we started in our home. He's an educator, and we end up in a school. And he used that same, and he used that same gift that He had given him to survive in the secular world, to be able to operate in ministry with it. So we finally, the building that we're in now, we've been there 20 years, and we actually now owns the block.
Oh,
So we have
wow.
our sanctuary, we have a school, we own it's a house on the property, and we also own the historic Opalaka Bank. And all of that is on one block. It just so happened my husband graduated from Morehouse College, and his his major was banking and finance. And so, just to show you what God did, as a realtor, I'm going to give you land and a house. Um, as an educator now, where he teaches in the public school system, you all now have your own school. God called us to ministry. We have the sanctuary, and because he was in banking, we now own the Opalaka's historic bank.
Oh, my.
Um, yeah, and we take no credit for nothing. When I say God did it, He did it, and He did it in His fashion, in the way He wanted it to be done. And so ministry has gone on in ways where God has allowed us to touch the lives of many people, and not just people, but the community that we actually serve in. And so I take nothing for granted. I give Him all the glory, because we was just obedient enough. When we asked Him to order our steps according to His word, He did just that.
Now, Pastor, I'm going to talk about your story also with Faith in Florida, which is amazing. Also, I'm so grateful for the background myself. I'm learning our guest here at Dozell, and I'm learning at the same time about your ministerial background, and that is indeed amazing. You know, that's nothing but God. You see the term used often, but God, exclamation point. We know that's nothing but God. And it's amazing how he gets us where he wants us to be. You know,
Yes.
I was I was talking earlier to Dr. Bracy, and when I talked to her, we always kind of, it's always an amazing story about their story. It was at New Covenant Church out over in Orlando. Um, I came down and spoke to Shiloh, where he eventually was called. Um, while I was in those cornfields in Illinois, my family came down and they had to speak. And then he ended up, certainly I couldn't feel bad about losing Dr. Bracy. He's one of my brothers in ministry from Jacksonville. And and then to see their story, and then, now being affiliated with her, reaffiliated with her. We both came out of the Bethel Church there in Jacksonville. I'm the Pastor McKissick Sr. And so being reaffiliated, she kind of told me that story of how they got started. And I said, it is just amazing. You leave Philadelphia, you're thinking you'll come into a church you're going to probably retire from, and no, God has another. So I understand that whole thing. Before we move over to your ED work, I want to ask you, um, because we recently, and I got to tell our audience, um, Pastor Rhonda has an ability to inspire a guy who is not too easily moved. Now the Word of God moves me easily, but I'm not an emotional type fella. But whenever she gives her her story of hope to inspire those of us in her employ, and those of us who she has camaraderie with, that to just inspire, there's one or two. There's either one of two reactions. Either people are going to be wiping their eyes. I try not to be in that group. Uh, but either they're wiping their eyes or they're singing her theme song, which she'll tell you about a little later on, singing along with her, and it just amazes me. It's just like being with a pastor. Um, when I was at Mount Bethel with Dr. Glover, we sit through several services, and he preached the same sermon. And I said, okay, that got me last time. I'm sure I'm not going to be standing up on it when he comes to this point next time. And each time, the Holy Spirit was, and you just feeling it as if you're hearing it for the first time. And that's how it is with her story. As she gives hope to us in this Florida, in this state, where if you didn't have people like her to inspire you, it would be very easily to just give up, because we're going to talk a little bit later about how crazy the political and the sociological and the economical and the racial scene has come, or moved for us. But Pastor, I was surprised the other week when we were in a national convene to hear one of your comrades, and he was here the other night, Dr. Osgood, um, say in that national forum how in cosmopolitan South Florida in 2023, women are still dealing with, particularly black women in the black church, are still dealing with issues as a black pastor. They
Yes.
mentioned a black pastor, but even as a black preacher, and I'm just shocked by that. Could you expound on that a little bit and kind of tell, you know,
Yeah, when I think about it, you're right, it's 20.
okay, so we've lost Pastor Rhonda for a second. She'll be back if she has to come back in, or however she'll be back. So okay, there she is.
Okay.
Okay,
Was doing 50 years ago is in some of our, we should just
okay. I don't know what's happening. We're losing her
can you hear
feed.
me?
She's still with us. Yes, ma'am. Would you just start over, please?
Okay. I said, unfortunately, there are still many faith leaders, particularly African American men, who has not yet accepted that God is calling women into ministry. And so, which is fine. I've gotten to the point that that's not really my problem or women problem. That's their problem with God. Uh,
Hmm.
you may want to figure out why is he calling women if that's the case. And so
Wow.
with my experience, I can remember um, being invited to share a word, and I was not allowed to minister in the pulpit, or I was asked that I must keep my head must be covered,
Oh,
or the
wow.
honorarium was very different. I could remember preaching and allowing God to use the gifts that He has given me. And my honorarium consisted of two drumsticks, and I beat nobody drums, but they gave me drumsticks along with a "I love you, Jesus" scarf.
Wow.
And so, um, but what I do know is that, and I share this with women all over, when you know God called you, He will make room for your gift.
Hmm.
And while some are still trying to figure out what that gift may be, as a woman in ministry, especially a black woman, you need to already know what your gift is, or you will be intimidated, or you
Hmm.
would second guess yourself. And we're living in a time where um I just believe before it's all over and before Jesus return, he may call some rocks, real rocks for real, that will make a noise where some won't. And
Wow.
so I just took it as a learning experience. Um and I no longer waste time to try to figure out why my own won't accept women in the pulpit. I don't have that kind of energy nor time. And so, And I just won't focus on that. But I encourage women that if you know God has called you to do a great work, then we need to follow God. And it's not that we're being disobedient. Um, in fact, we're being totally obedient in following what God says and what He wants us to do. It was this one pastor I can remember when he asked me, he had never had a woman to minister in his congregation and his from his pulpit. And he asked me to do, and during that time, this was in the early 90s, a 5 night revival.
Mm.
And what he said was, and I found myself, I was speechless because I didn't, I knew that he didn't acknowledge women in ministry, but yet he acknowledged the calling on my life. And he said, you were able to say some things that it would not have been received well from a man.
Mm.
And I just believe if God give it to us, He also prepares us in a way to share where it can be received. And so over the years, God has blessed me in a way where I'm just not shaken by anything anymore. I've been through too much to be shaken by what man say. At the end of the day, I just really want to hear a servant well done. And I know that's not going to come from a man. It has to be from God.
Pastor, I just think that um, I think that that's I mean, not that we need an explanation. Let's see, I'm trying to see where I am here. Toya, um, thank you. We're all remote tonight, so please bear with us. I'm not in studio, and neither is she. Um, I think that is as well as the issue can be addressed. When we were discussing it, it just caught me by surprise that was when I heard Dr. Osgood say that. It totally caught me by surprise. I mean, totally caught me by surprise because I thought that was not an issue especially in South Florida and in our ministry where it's so open and so prevalent. And my story is I went to a seminary. My one criteria for this wherever I was going to land in seminary, it had to be, and that was when it was trying to move from taboo to giving an ear to it to acceptability to where it was just the order of the day, women in ministry. So that was any seminary at that point that did not teach it or was not prevalent that was off my list. And believe it or not, Southern Seminary, which at that time was the most liberal of the Southern Baptist seminaries, was one that moved very strongly in women in ministry. There was nothing. Sometimes half of our preaching classes would be the gender would be mixed, half women, half men. And Southern Seminary had this awesome school of church social work. Many local people went there as opposed to going to getting an MSW from the University of Louisville. And it was ran by I think what possibly was a same sex female, whatever difference that made. And as soon as they went back crazy conservative, they wiped all of that out and just it was just crazy. And I guess I was just so surprised to see that in our vernacular, just really shame and just I was embarrassed. And so when Dr. Osgood came on, we ended up dedicating the whole show to the Dr. Osgood part of her as opposed to Senator Osgood. And the thing about her story that so surprised me, I mean, really surprised me, I thought that her ministerial notoriety kind of took place after Dr. Carter had retired, certainly after he had passed. And she told our audience that no, she went from being one who was just basically called and just never thought she'd get to exercise her gifts to being almost like a unofficial armor bearer to Dr. Carter, to Dr. Carter telling her that, encouraging her to go to seminary, and then saying to her, God had moved on his heart to ordain her. She was like Tom Diamond came to me and ordained. I was not one of those guys that had to beg or push to be ordained. He came to me and said, listen, I'm going to be moving around a lot, and I need you to be ordained. And he ordained me before I ever finished up that bachelor's degree. But when she told me her story, I was just utterly amazed. And then to hear the other half of it, that in 2023, it's being resisted. I'll just say this. I am so glad people like you exercise your gift because you still are a hope monger and I know you. I know I heard you pray, so I know what you do spiritually for the hearts of so many of us, and so grateful for your stance and your tenacity and determination. And let me just use the word on here, Facebook, you and YouTube, y'all will be all right. That you just blocked out what Negroes think and moved on uh, to, to
You know,
what God's all about. Pastor, we're gonna take a
God
break.
has always God
You
has
go ahead.
always used women. I say God has always used women in the Bible. Why would he stop?
If I'm not mistaken, if we wanted to press a case, press the issue, a woman preached the first sermon. I think he told them to go, the angel told them to go and tell it that the Savior has arisen. And if that's
Hmm.
not a sermon, why do we always end most of our sermons end with that? So
That's
I,
right. So
I just wanted to amplify this for any of our listeners, anybody who, any of our viewers, anybody who's still hung up. I think you had the right answer for that. That we had to address this issue. I'm so glad they heard it from authoritarian and a loving spirit like yours. We're going to break and we're going to come right back and we're going to talk about the work for democracy that you do.
thank you.
Thank you. That's right. GoGigaWorld.com. They can make a guy like even me, even in the dark tonight, they make me look good. If they can make me look good, all of your virtual needs, we know the pandemic's over, but we Zoom, StreamYard, these platforms are here to stay. They can handle all of your virtual needs, every last one of them. You saw the client list. You saw Sounds of Blackness. I think you saw Anthony Hamilton. They've done work with many BET. They'll make you look good. If it's virtual or if it's websiting, website designing, go see GoGigaWorld.com. Okay, tonight I am kind of on a night when I have such a giant stalwart with democracy. It hurts me that I've got to deal with uh, a Dane dog, another one of our very own. But that's where we are tonight. Um, I think are we there tonight? Um, Yeah. So here's a nice ding dog. After last week, we had um, we had another athlete. We had John Morant's. Tonight, it's Tyreek Hill. Unbelievable. Do we have him? Do we have his do we have his picture? Um, because if we don't have him, we'll hold off on him. Okay. So we're doing so much remote tonight. We'll hold off on this Dane dog. Tyreek Hill, you get a 1 week reprieve. You're killing us, man. Tonight we wanted to talk. We really wanted to deal with Governor Despicable and some of the things that he's doing in our state. But I mean, we come on, our brothers and sisters, our athletes. You guys are role models, regardless of what Charles Barkley says. And you guys have got to stand up and stop being on blast for the wrong things. We'll continue on with Pastor Rhonda Thomas. We know her very affectionately. She's known around this state as Pastor Rhonda. And Pastor Rhonda is also, you heard the ministerial side of her. Now we want to delve into where she's known nationally and probably internationally. And that is as the executive director of Faith in Florida, and beyond that, the work that she does for democracy across the world. Pastor, just tell us your story of Faith in Florida and how you got there and what we do. And I'm proud to
Okay.
say what we do.
Yeah, and it is definitely a we thing because I cannot do it by myself. So I am so grateful to you and all of the work that you contribute, and when it comes to protecting democracy. I started in with Faith in Florida. At that time, it was named PICO, Pico, Florida, and it was in 2012. And I started as a fellow. It was a campaign where we wanted people to literally vote no on three because it would have impacted taxes going up and many people would have lost their jobs, such as county jobs. It would have impacted our police department, firefighters, parks and recreation, our educators. And so we didn't want that. So I started as a fellow, just interacting and engaging in a conversation with faith leaders about why we need to make sure that our people get out to vote, because this bill, if it would have passed, it would hurt particularly Black communities. And after the campaign was over, I had an interest in what organizing could be. I just had an interest. Um, and so during that time, if you wanted to be a new organizer, if you wanted to start out organizing, PICO will send you to the national, what was a boot camp. And they sent me to DC for this week long boot camp to do some basic training on what organizing can look like. And I got the biggest F. They said I was not an organizer. I didn't fit the criteria. I was too clergy, and they sent me home. And my then supervisor terminated me. And it just so happened that while I was working that short period with Pico, Florida, I we shared an office with SEIU. And SEIU, we had this huge campaign that was going on. SEIU did, because University of Miami, which was known as the U, was not treating the food service workers right, which was predominantly Black workers. And they had asked me if I would contribute, if I would help, and I really wanted to help. And but I had, I wasn't hired as an organizer, so I felt like I couldn't help. But SEIU saw different. I went to work with them. They taught me how to do labor organizing, and we did a great job. We won. Donna Shalala was the president of University of Miami at that time, but we won where those food service workers got a union, and we were able. My at that time, my boss asked me, say, "Can I organize 50 clergy?" And he gave me about 3 months. Well, less than 3 months, I had 95 clergy on board, ready to tackle University of Miami, and we won. And then when I say I was on board, we were on board. It wasn't just faith leaders. My nephew at that time was playing for University of Miami. He had left UM and went to Baltimore. I got um, a Baltimore Ravens football players involved who once attended UM. And so that's where the basics of my organizing really begun. And when PICO found out, which is now Faith in Action on the national level, when they found out what happened, they wanted to reconsider and say, well, maybe she can organize. And so at that time, I had an attitude, and what you don't want to do is make a Black woman mad. And so I was very angry. I'm like, oh, no, no, no. You didn't see fit. But some kind of way, because of my the manager, Desmond Meade, who now is the executive director of Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, he was able to reason, and I came back and I started out as an organizer. They taught me faith-based organizing. I came in organizing around reducing gun violence and mass incarceration, not knowing that one day I would be impacted where my 23-year-old nephew will lose his life to senseless gun violence. And he was a firefighter. He was my brother's younger son. And so my organizing became extremely painful, where I actually could feel the hurt and pain from other parents who had lost a loved one to gun violence. But organizing got real for me because now I'm now impacted. I went from being an organizer where I was asked to be a statewide campaign manager around the Let My People Vote campaign in 2018, when we were able to get Floridians out to vote, so returning citizens, 1.5 million returning citizens, can get their voting rights restored. And from there, I became the deputy director. And we were only in 4 counties. And since I've been the executive director since late 2019, we're now 41 counties in over 100 cities and towns. And so we expanded, but I know when I was offered the position as the executive director, I was number one, the first Black woman to lead this. It was normally white men. White men cannot fix Black folks.
Hmm.
They just don't. They may have contribute to the mess, but they can't fix us. And so, being led by a Black woman for the first time, I prayed a prayer that the Jabez prayer, and I asked God if you would broaden our territory, broaden my territory, and bless me indeed. I promise I will do right and be a good steward over what He allowed me to touch and to be a part of. And so that growth came rapid, but it came with a team of people who He allowed to me to just engage. And we saw the same thing. And the way I see Florida is our theme for Faith in Florida is building a beloved community where everyone feels a sense of belonging. And unfortunately, all Floridians do not feel a sense of belonging in the state of Florida. Many Black people don't feel belong. Um, our immigrant community, our young people, feel like their voices are not being heard. And so he has allowed me to expand where we have a youth department, we have a young people department. We're in rural counties who have been often overlooked. And I just give him the glory of giving me the space where I have turned organizing into ministry, where we are touching lives of everyday people who have been discriminated against, disenfranchised, oppressed, left out. And he's allowed me to build a platform where everyday marginalized people will feel a sense of belonging through organizing and we building power within communities where their voices can be heard on all levels. So that's how it started.
Pastor, you have a legendary. I think it was a part of the returning citizens get out the vote event, and I'm gonna let you tell the story. But since I was a part of this a few months ago during a legislative session, um, they were voting the next day on this crazy gun bill where there was no registration needed, and they actually and by the way, since that has happened, there have been two tragic deaths that have hit us, that has hit the Broward County community, and we're going to talk about that when Senator Osgood comes back on in a few weeks. But um, during our demonstration there, but the day before they were going to vote on the gun violence, I mean the gun, that's what it turns out to be, gun violence. We demonstrated, and one thing that happens out of our demonstration is that they didn't go along with the open carry law that they had planned to vote on the next day. So I feel kind of, I feel that we may have had something to do with that. I understand they strategically plan to do it at a later date, along with this guy's campaign for president. But I understand that you were a part of a movement that actually shut down Interstate 10. Can you tell us about that?
I'm
Yes, it is. It's amazing.
I when I, it's amazing because I've been a part of shutting down quite a few highways, 95, 75, but um, with that particular movement, and I want to make sure that I'm talking about the right one, is because it's two that you mentioned. It's the returning citizens getting their voting rights restored, and then it's the permitless gun violence bill. The permitless gun violence bill, which just happened. We were already um, organizing around reducing gun violence because it's been proven if you can reduce gun violence, you can definitely reduce mass incarceration. And
Mhm.
we fought hard to get that bill passed. You know, we had to collect all of those petitions and just so it could get on the ballot as an amendment. Um, it, I just want to just let me just share a tad bit on why that meant so much to me was number one, the clemency hearings take place 4 times a year. And I went to my first clemency hearing and I couldn't believe that what was being done, particularly how it was impacting black and brown men. Um, I just wanted to share that there was a gentleman at that time, Rick Scott was the governor, who had committed a crime when he was 18 years old, and it was a nonviolent crime, and he had paid his debt to society. He was 23 years old, and from 23 to the age of 68 years old, he had not been given the opportunity to vote because Florida did not believe and still don't believe in second chances. Um, but what they said to him was, "You're 68 years old, and you have gotten 5 traffic tickets from the age of 23 to 68. Therefore, we will not be able to restore your voting rights." So naturally, that touched my heart because I'm like, oh my God, 23 years old to 68, and traffic tickets was what they was holding against them. Said you had 5 traffic tickets within that age period, so we can't restore your rights to vote. That touched me in a way that's why we led that statewide campaign in getting voters out to vote. The next thing is that when we shut down the highway, and I'm trying to figure out which highway because it's been many, is with the gun violence. We have shut down because we're trying to get the attention of elected officials, local elected officials, that they can do more because people were dying, our children were dying in the streets. Mass shootings was taking place, and we needed to get the attention of those who can do something about it. And so when I say I've shut down several highways, just fighting for wages, I've led in shutting down a highway dressed like Wendy from Wendy's as we fought for $15. So, Pastor, I don't know if I touched the right highway. Please let me know.
No, 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 no. But I mean, really. So let's go back to gun violence because we've had that hit in my family. My brother's my co-host, and he lost a son to gun violence in the peak of his life. And so, what do you see? What do you see as the rationale for the bill that they just passed while we were in Tallahassee observing the session back in May? What how can they how do they what's the rationale? What is I know it'll never make sense to us, but what is the story? What is the narrative that they put out to make it more accessible for handguns? You and I mean, I guess my suspicious mind just tell I'm a former police officer, just my suspicious mind tell me you're just making it easy to kill black men. I'm sorry, that's where my mind goes.
Well, my mind and heart goes there. Um, First of all, and I'm going to just use this for a second. I'm going to lead right into why I think the way I do. Um, as long as we shoot each other, it's okay. It's okay. It reminds me of back in the day when the East Coast, West Coast rappers was fighting, and they did very little because it was okay if they shot up each other.
Mm.
Um, and so I see that. That's the way I see it now. And so one shooting in Miami Gardens cost 820. It cost the taxpayers $821,000 per shooting. That's just in Miami Gardens. So I'm from Miami-Dade. You know how many cities is inside? It's 37 different municipalities inside of Miami-Dade County. But just Miami Gardens, the data shows when we did our research and calculated everything, one shooting, homicide, costs $821,000. Sometimes it may be three or four shootings in Miami Gardens within a week. Some of it make the news, some of it doesn't. But like I said, if it's okay to shoot if black men shoot each other. But that bill did not give them the permission, the okay to give them power because they have a gun. But it did give those who don't look like them, particularly white folks, the okay because they are saying that if they felt like their life was in danger, they can
Right.
shoot and stand their own ground.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it wasn't designed for it to be a way of protecting yourselves, but it is designed to give white folks an opportunity to shoot you because they felt like their life. You know how many feel like, unfortunately, black men statue alone intimidates many white folks. Oh, I just got scared, and because I'm afraid, I'm going to shoot. Just look at how many are shooting through their doors,
Right.
and
Right.
and so it did not give the power where one can use this gun as an asset to protect yourself when it comes to black men, but it
Yeah.
did give them access to shoot black men and say they're standing on their own ground, and to be able to say that I operated in fear, and so it's okay to shoot. And so that's the way I see that bill. And it's so important for our young folks and those who choose to carry a gun, um, that they have to be really, really careful in a way that it works the opposite. Because
Yes.
unfortunately, in this country and definitely in the state of Florida, laws that are made, there's laws for black people, there are laws for white people, and now brown people are getting their own set of laws when it comes to our immigrant communities. So I just don't want, because I just believe effective July 1st, Florida will look like the Wild Wild West. Gun smoke, cowboys and Indians, all of that because of this permitless gun carry. And I don't fault anyone that chooses to carry a gun, but it is many people who probably should not carry a gun for various reasons. But for it to be just everybody get a gun now, that's crazy.
Wh-
And so,
What do you think, Pastor?
uh, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just think that if that cost for Miami Gardens was 821,000, can you imagine what it's going to cost taxpayers once this permitless gun carry goes in effect?
So my question is, what do you think held them back from at that point doing the open carry, and do you see that as being something that's soon on the horizon, as we were told by the black legislatures in Tallahassee?
I think that it just falls in line with whatever the strategic plan was in the beginning.
Yeah.
Is the open carry just falls in line with the permitless gun carry. So
Yeah.
and that's even scarier because I'm like, can you imagine you're walking in the mall and you just see guns everywhere, and since we have so many hot tempered young folks, oh, you bumped into me, oh, you stepped on my sneaker, and everyone has a
Yeah.
gun and it's open, you see it, that's frightening. Or just in case, well, I was in the store, just like Faith in Buffalo, who had to go through the shooting that took place in Buffalo and how they had to organize around it. Where you're just in the grocery store and a young man comes in and just shoot up the grocery store. In that open carry, because there are some states, Georgia is an open carry state. And
Wow.
so I just think that that's just where's the Where's the accountability and responsibility that lies on in one's hands who has this gun? And not to take the gun as a toy, and it's not a space to show how much power you have. Um, it's going to be that much more dangerous and that much more costly.
So we really took a beating. Wasn't a beating. It was a bloodbath that we suffered um, during this past legislative session. When I was away in school and when I was away from Florida for we were going like 12 years or whatever it was, 15 years, whatever it was. Wherever I was just proud to say I'm from Florida. You know, Florida's part of the South, but it's not Southern. But now, with this clown in Tallahassee has gone to great lengths, almost to he and Abbott are almost like on a collision course to see who's going to pass the craziest laws, who's going to ship uh, inhumane and ship the most immigrants into a foreign land. I mean, it's just really sad, and we really took a. Of course, we've had the me and how we're going to do our voter registration now because of how the biggest thing a year ago I could sell to returning citizens. No man, if it's not this or that you're charged with, you can very easily your fines are paid. No, come on, man, and sign up to vote. But now he has done just the governor Despicable has done just what he set out to do by intimidating voters now with this police force because people are just scared. And how can we? If you're the hope monger, how do we overcome that?
You know, it's all strategic, especially with the voter registration. Is if we as a people ever realize and think, just all we have to do is think, is that our voting must obviously be it's very powerful and it's also a threat. If it wasn't a threat, they wouldn't go through such extremes in trying to stop us from registering to vote and to actually get out to vote. What has happened in Florida through some of this horrible legislation, all they've done is modernize slavery. And many
Absolutely.
times we miss it because we don't know our history to begin with. So if we don't know our history, we won't be able to see they have actually modernized slavery. They no
Yes, yes.
longer hang us, so they shoot us. So no, you don't have to be able to guess how many jelly beans are in a jar. We will just make it that much more difficult. I never would have thought in 2023 that I would have to seek a criminal defense attorney to protect my staff for registering people to vote. Now, if that's not a tactic, a scare tactic, number one, to shut down third party voter registration organizations or to stop us from registering people to vote, and then to know that staff can be harassed by this new elected election police department that no one really understands what the real responsibility is anyway. Um, that level of harassment we won in 2018 where returning citizens can get their voting rights restored. Then they came up with the fines and fees. Then they started the false arrests, arresting folks. And it's just one intimidating effort after another that they actually put into law. All that says to me is we got to be a powerful group of people. Our vote really does matter, and that our vote has become a threat to the entire state of Florida. The entire state. We're not just a threat in one county, we have become a threat in all 67 counties. And we don't even realize we're a threat.
Wow. Wow. Oh, how scary that is. How scary that is. Pastor, I'm gonna ask you, like I asked Senator Osgood, and I know you are busy. I went through. I tried getting you through the chain of command as my police training would have taught me, and after I just couldn't get to it. I said I'm just gonna approach her myself. All she can do is fire me. I'm gonna. We got to get her on this show. Um, we're going to get Senator Osgood back on. She's going to be on the next few weeks, but somewhere over later in the fall, when we have seen some of the effects of these new laws, and Dr. Bracy, who's kind of enduring, she's on a season of grief now. Would you consider coming back with us later in the fall, deeper into the year? I know how busy your schedule is. I'm even careful asking you that.
No, no, no. I think it's worth it. I think there's a message that has to get out. And so I'm so thankful for what you're doing and the audience that you're actually reaching because we can't do it by ourselves. And my prayer is that whoever has heard this podcast will be able to share it, share this information because it's so vital. And so I just appreciate the fact that you invited me, and I would love to come back. We just need to make it happen because after July 1st, many lives will be changed. And when these bills go in effect, and your listening audience need to know as much as they could so they'll know how to respond.
Well, I sincerely appreciate it. Like I say, I'm remote. I thought I would be home and able to use my home studio tonight, and our producer's remote because of some situations with her. But I'm kind of in my mind trying to figure out how we're going to end the show tonight. I wanted to end it with we only have like 60 seconds left. You are a person of hope. And you inspire me. I mean, when I'm out there in that heat, trying to register voters and knowing that this guy in Tallahassee is doing everything possible, can you share a word instead of us going out tonight with "as I see it"? Tonight, we want to go off with your word of hope, and then we're going to do a special dedication. And I got a little special thing. We'll surprise you on the way out the door.
Okay. It's two things that keep me going. Number one, I do this work because of my children. And if we look and see what is the next generation going to do, they give me hope. Secondly, one of the organizers who I love and once wrote this, he said, I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or change the world, but I guarantee I will spark the brain that would change the world. And I just want to be the one that can help spark some brains. And who wrote that was the late Tupac Shakur. But what keeps me going every day is the late Sam Cooke. A
I
change is
got you.
going to come.
I got you. I got
You
you. I
got
got
me?
you on that one. I
That's what
got you
keeps
on
me
that one.
going. That's
I
my
got you on
everyday.
that one tonight. So, Toy, this is how we're going to do it. Pastor Rhonda, we love you and appreciate you so much. Toy, if you would just put the dedication up and we'll just fade away from the dedication, and we got to bless Pastor Rhonda as she blesses so many of us. Just do the dedication, put that photo up, and we'll go from there. Tonight's dialogue with Dozell is dedicated to a real one. That's capital R, capital E, capital A, capital L. Did I spell it right? A real one. Ben Frazier. I'm a native of Jacksonville. He started out at Channel 4 here in Jacksonville. He went away, he came back uh, from the broadcast and became an activist in this community that was an activist all over the state. Many of us saw a video from just a few weeks ago, a few months ago, where Ben uh, failed to leave. He wouldn't let them run him out of a meeting, and they arrested him. And my mother was commenting tonight on how gentle the police treated him, not only because of police under the gun and under the watchful eyes now, but because of even their respect for him, as he has been an activist for justice here in this state, and particularly through Duval County. Tonight, This show is dedicated, and it's only apropos to this tonight that we have another real one as our guest, Pastor Rhonda Thomas, as she is a fighter for democracy. Tonight we salute you, Ben Frazier, and thank you for all that you do. We're going out tonight. We may get in a little trouble, but this is Pastor Rhonda's song. This is how she leaves us, and we're just gonna fade out from here tonight. God bless you, Pastor Rhonda. The song says, no matter how crazy, how tough it is, we're fighting because the change is going to come.
That's it.
Oh, yes, it will. It's been too